Have you ever just looked at human history and wondered why we so often seem to defend the very things that end up destroying us? Well, at the same time, we reject the ideas that could actually heal us? Well, today, we're diving into a really fascinating treatise called Tragedy of the Natural Man, and it tries to explain this exact puzzle. The argument is that this isn't just some occasional mistake we make, it's something much deeper, a core part of our nature.
So, the whole discussion really kicks off with this one simple question. But think about it for a second. Have you ever listened to somebody who is just so articulate, so confident, so persuasive, only to realize later on that what they were saying was just, well, completely wrong? The source material suggests this isn't some rare thing. Nope, it happens all the time.
And this slide right here really breaks down that core distinction for us. You've got charisma and polish on one side. That's the stuff that sounds good, the stuff that sounds like truth. And on the other side, you've got substance and accuracy, what is true, but maybe it doesn't come in such a slick, shiny package. The treatise makes the point that real wisdom is being able to tell these two apart, because our default setting is to get swayed by the shiny presentation, not necessarily the correct one.
But, it doesn't stop there. This isn't just a critique of good public speaking. The source pushes this idea even further, and it asks a more pointed question. Can a person be highly educated, super convincing, and still be profoundly unintelligent? Whoa, that really sets up a powerful idea about what true intelligence even is.
And here's the answer the source gives. It suggests that real, functional intelligence isn't about knowing everything. It's actually about humility. That honest recognition of how little we actually know. This kind of intelligence is open, it's curious, and it resists that arrogance that makes us want to just double down on our own mistakes. The treatise argues this is the only kind of intelligence that can actually get you to the truth.
Okay, so with that foundation in place, the treatise moves into its first major part, the diagnosis. If we have this weird, puzzling tendency to fight against the truth, where does it come from? And honestly, why on earth do we do it?
Now, this is where it starts to get a little bit heavy. The argument is that this tendency to reject truth, it's not some occasional glitch in our programming. The source claims it's a fundamental feature of the human condition. It's not something we sometimes do, it's something we are at our very core wired to do. And boom, this single quote is the central pillar of the entire argument. The treatise basically says that this scriptural concept of the natural man, this idea of a state of being that is inherently opposed to divine truth, is the clearest explanation for why humanity, generation after generation, seems to be at war with its own best interests. It's a spiritual diagnosis for a very real, historical problem.
And the treatise argues this isn't just some abstract philosophical idea. This slide shows some pretty stark historical examples from the source where this pattern plays out on a massive tragic scale. I mean, just look at Nazi Germany. The horrifying era of Aryan supremacy was defended with passion, while the simple truth of universal humanity was attacked, and the consequence was the Holocaust. The source argues this isn't just bad politics, it's that enmity in action.
So, how are we supposed to tell the difference between someone speaking truth and someone who's just driven by their own ego? Well, the source offers this really key distinction between arrogance and assurance. See, arrogance is all about the self. It says, I am right. It has to be impressive. But assurance, the treatise explains, is rooted in that humility we talked about. It says, truth has been revealed. It's not about defending yourself, it's about being obedient to the message.
Okay, so after diagnosing the problem as a spiritual one, the treatise naturally moves to a proposed spiritual solution, and it frames this as the only known remedy that can actually get to the root cause, instead of just treating the symptoms. And the remedy it proposes is basically a three-step process. First, absolute, no-holds-barred truth-telling, no spin. Second, true repentance. And we're not talking about a carefully worded public apology here. The source defines this as a radical change of heart. And third, forgiveness, which is presented as the only force out there that is powerful enough to break that endless, vicious cycle of revenge that just plagues human history. This slide really gets to why the treatise presents this as such a unique solution. The argument is that this framework is the only place where justice and mercy can actually meet. It's a system that allows for evil to be condemned without exception, but it also allows for the guilty to find real forgiveness, and for the victim to be freed from the poison of hatred. It's a path to restoration, not just retribution. But that leads to the obvious question. If this perfect solution exists, why is it so often ignored, or even despised? And this brings us to the final and most sobering part of the whole argument, the part that actually gives the treatise its name, the tragedy of the natural man.
According to the source, it all boils down to one primary reason. The gospel solution demands one thing, just one thing, that the natural man in all its pride and enmity can never, ever tolerate: surrender. It requires us to admit we are wrong, that we need help, and that we are not in control.
This quote just powerfully summarizes the entire conclusion. The rejection of the solution isn't an intellectual problem. It's not that there isn't enough evidence. The treatise argues it's a moral problem. It's an active choice, a preference for a state of being that's totally contrary to truth, simply because that state feels more comfortable to our fallen nature.
So, here it is. The ultimate tragedy is this: the cure exists. It is freely offered to everyone. But the patient, the world, not only refuses the medicine, but often despises the one offering it. The problem, as the treatise frames it, isn't external. It's a problem of the human heart.
And so, the treatise leaves us with this final, haunting question. If the only remedy that actually addresses the root of our self-destructive behavior is consistently rejected, all because of pride, well, where does that leave us? What then? That's a question worth thinking about.